I ran from carriage to carriage, but wherever I moved, these creatures slid along the mud outside the tube train and followed me. I sat for a moment trying to hatch a plan, but there was no way out. I had to just sit it out. But this plan was soon to end, as I heard a smash of glass further up from one of the carriages. They had started to break their way through the glass. Maybe they also sensed the nearness of the next station, where I could make my escape. I got up and continued running down the carriage, which was completely empty save for one tramp who lay still on the floor. I bent down to see if he was still alive. I thought maybe I had a chance against these impish creatures if there was two of us. But when I turned him over, fearing he was dead, I did not expect the sudden outpour of maggot-like insects with legs that crawled out from a hole within his body. They crawled towards me like cockroaches, as if they could, like a sheepdog, smell the scent of man. I dropped his body, and his head cracked on the floor and opened up like a coconut to reveal larger maggots, maybe a foot wide, which had clearly licked out the inside of this poor man's head. I immediately, without any hesitation, jumped on the creature, and at first it felt like its skin had a shell-like quality. I took the strain as he tried to move, but I held on top of the side of the carriage, and with my arms out pushed down, squeezing it to the ground. A pungent green odour arose from its lifeless, dead body. The smaller maggots stopped bothering me again, and began to lick on the dead creature, and I took this opportunity to exit. The train stopped at the next station. I didn't know where, I didn't care. I jumped out and ran down the tube, up the nearest flight of stairs, through a long corridor to the outside world, which I found was in darkness, and a dark, thick fog had descended. I could see lights out to the horizon, and I heard a fog lamp horning. I gauged that I must be somewhere near the Thames, but I didn't have time to find my locale, and continued to run down what felt like a cobbled street. I sprinted down this street, and all the way along I could hear the scurrying of these impish creatures I'd seen in the underground. I stopped outside some pub that had an alcove and took some well-needed breathers. I crouched down and looked from whence I had came, and there I could see those creatures scuttling along the pavement. They were caped in mud, which fell off as they ran. They were getting nearer, so I had to continue my escape. Before long my legs started to ache. I couldn't run forever. So I found an abandoned house which was boarded up, and broke my way in and hid down in the basement, hoping these creatures would simply pass by and give up the chase. It was in this time I thought about things I had never before considered. The first was why I had in the first place found myself in this strange position. Why had I been disturbed? And it was then I recollected something. A few years back, when I had spoken to a strange man who I caught breaking into my house, I wrestled him to the ground and tried to remove his hood to see his face, but he would not let me. It was only then I remembered the connection. The hood. He was the same man. For I never managed to get the hood off the man who broke into my house. I remember how vulnerable I felt at this time, so when he said to me, "If you ever speak of this, you ever say you saw me, then I will come back for you." How remiss of me to have forgotten such a thing. But then that was 3 years ago, and I had never spoken a word of it to no one. And then it dawned on me. Before all this had started, I had indeed spoken of this occasion to my doctor, in connection with a dream that I kept having about this man breaking back into my house. I had forgotten his threat that he had made to me. But now he was dead. I only had to look at my hands to know that. So why were these creatures still here? The skeletons had ceased their motion once he had died. And then it dawned on me. Like a queen wasp who was killed, her worker wasps don't just cease, they continue. But worse, I thought. Now all these ghostly creatures had no leader, no direction as such. They were a will of their own, maybe even angered by their master's death, and not worrying about hiding away from mortal man. What had I unleashed upon this very world? It was then I heard a noise from above me. I could hear the distinct noise of what sounded like hooves moving about. I heard furniture being knocked down. I rushed to the basement door and held it tightly shut as I heard the hoofs descend the stairs. I felt a real sense that this time I was not to escape. I had held of the handle, awaiting it to be opened, but there was nothing. Suddenly it had gone silent. I quickly found the back door and fled. As dawn started to rise, I found myself at the front door of my house. How relieved I felt to be home again. There was a strange car outside my house. To whom it belonged I did not know. Without any hesitation I opened the door to be greeted by my doctor. I went inside into the kitchen where my wife was standing. When she saw me, she looked a little shocked. I hadn't realized how many nights I had been away, for it seemed like just 1 or 2 to me, but I had been gone for some time. The doctor entered the room, and I turned to face him. He looked at me strangely, but it was a look of concern. I asked him straight out, "Why are you looking at me like that?" He pointed to my hands. "What about them?" I said, not even looking again. He pointed without saying a word, but his face gave a grave expression. I looked towards my hands and saw they were covered in the blood of the black-hooded man, when I had mutilated him to get to his heart. "I can explain," I said. I turned to my wife, thinking she must be thinking the same thing, but she said nothing and just looked at me blankly. "I can explain," said I again, with more force this time. At this point I heard a car pull up outside, and the door clunk, and footsteps through my landing, and 2 policemen walked in. "What is the meaning of this? I did nothing wrong. I can explain, and then you'll understand." "I'm sure you can, Gerald," said my doctor, in a slow and understanding way. But I knew from his tone he was just saying that as if I were mad. "I'm not mad. Tell them, Vera, tell them what I told you already. Go show them the hole upstairs in my bedroom if they don't believe me." The doctor looked at me and took hold of my arm. "Gerald, it's okay. You're going to come with me." "Why?" I demanded. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Gerald," the doctor continued calmly, "your wife has been dead for 3 years now. Vera died. She is dead." "No, she's not. She's there, right behind me." The doctor was looking straight at me. I did not look behind. He couldn't see her. I turned around. She was gone. But she had been there. She had. She died. You remember? There was a burglary here 3 years ago. You found the man over your wife. He killed her. Don't you remember? "No," I screamed. "No, you don't understand. I've been haunted these last nights. I can see the dead. She must have been one of them. The man that killed her, I saw him. I killed him. This is the blood on my hands, see?" I outstretched my blood-stained hands. At that moment the policeman put cuffs on them. It was then I remembered my vision, that I had seen whence I had fallen from the crack in the wall in my house, of a cage and my hands covered in blood. It was a prison cell. They didn't understand I was telling them the truth. They didn't understand the danger they were in, that I had unleashed these creatures upon the world by killing their leader. I had tried to run, but the police had hold of me tightly. They took me with the doctor into the car, drove me into the police station a few blocks away, and threw me into a police cell, and left me alone there, trapped, not believing what I tried to explain to them. It was useless. Continuing there was no way to escape. All that had happened to me over these past nights, it was a tale that no one could believe. But it had happened, and they would know when the night came, and the creatures would come once again. They would come for me too, and on their hands would be all of our blood.